everybody. Okay, so everybody got their Zoom tablets? Playing with them? All right. Well, hopefully it's been an enormously exciting day for you all. I know it has been for all of us Boxers. We're having a great time at this first conference. And I thought I'd spend a little time talking to you about, well, at least on the agenda, it's labeled as talking a little bit about the journey of content management and how it's gone from sucky to sexy. So I'm going to tell you a story, and along the way I'll tell you a little about me, since I didn't get much of a chance to introduce myself to you earlier. And then, of course, we'll introduce our last featured speaker of the day. So let me kind of take you back about 15 years. And I've talked to enough of you in the audience to know there are some of you that will remember these days firsthand. You know, back in the mid-90s or so, we actually saw a really interesting time in technology. We saw all sorts of different technology solutions booming everywhere around content in some form or fashion. Content management tools, collaboration tools. Everyone was talking about knowledge management. Remember that? Right? Tacit knowledge and explicit knowledge and all that fun stuff. And those tools were kind of running rampant, frankly. There were tools to do everything, and they were all separate. So you had XML management tools and document management tools and web content management tools and rich media tools. You remember all this stuff, right? And the unfortunate thing about all that was that they were all doing kind of sort of the same thing at their base core, which is helping to aggregate and distribute content in a meaningful way. But they all did it slightly differently. And so, of course, companies were burdened with all these disparate systems and silos of information. And, of course, users needed to get at this stuff from all these different systems easily, and yet they couldn't because they had to go to 6 different places. So out of this whole mess was born this concept, which I admittedly helped to create and further, called enterprise content management. Well, why wouldn't you just sort of blend all these technologies into one massive platform that solved all these problems, let you aggregate content of any kind, and mix and match what you needed for different audiences and user communities, which sounded in principle like a pretty good idea. Don't need 6 or 7 systems anymore. You can just use one. It's better, it's faster, it's bigger, it's all that, and more expensive, of course. So thus was born ECM, and we all had our struggles with that over the years, but it's turned out to be some pretty rich technology that probably most of you in the room have invested in some way, shape, or form over the last decade. And I think what was really interesting is that ECM didn't really ever materialize exactly the way it was envisioned from the outset. All those technologies never quite merged into one. Lots of them did, but not all of them. You know, think for a moment about web publishing. That's still kind of a separate process with its own separate tools, with its own set of processes specific to publishing information to websites. So that never quite made its way fully into the ECM suite. And the same thing's kind of true around digital asset management or rich media handling, where long-form video and short-form video and rich media and things take a lot of special handling. Everything from full text indexing, closed caption copy or subtitle text, to clip editing and all sorts of streaming demands and so on and so forth. And that too kind of remained a little bit specialized. And so ECM sort of ended up, a few of those silos kind of popped back out, and ECM sort of really ended up being most appropriate for these bet your business on it, super important back office applications that most often were very process centric, decision heavy, and were very much about compliance, which is a pretty tough set of problems to solve. So that ECM technology is so well suited to doing those things, and is really what those systems of record that Jeff Moore talked about earlier today. So that's all great. Those systems are in use, and those are really geared toward the users that operate within those business processes, right? So kind of a select set of folks that are really working on that back office, bet your business on it kind of stuff. But the mass community of kind of the everyday knowledge worker, the people that just need to get to their stuff in a timely fashion and know they're working with current information, were not really addressed with most of those ECM systems. It wasn't really designed to be perfectly attuned to the lightweight use case of the everyday worker. And so along comes this idea called SharePoint. And SharePoint, before it really got out into the market, was going to be the panacea, right? The tool for the masses, the one that everybody could use in a lightweight form or fashion, as opposed to the ECM stuff for the more compliance and decision-heavy stuff. And then SharePoint comes out. You guys remember the term basic content services started being thrown around, and everyone was pretty excited about that, kind of the other end of the spectrum, if you will, from the other high-end solutions from ECM providers. And so we saw SharePoint hit the market, and you know what? It really wasn't basic content services. Not even Microsoft wanted it positioned that way. You know, it's pretty feature-rich, and it's got a configurable toolkit. And frankly, Microsoft wanted to see it positioned much more toward ECM. And truth be told, SharePoint with its configurations and tools and customizations and all that kind of stuff, frankly, was much closer to the same end of the spectrum that the ECM vendors were on than anything that the mass user community at this end of the spectrum really wanted. And I think that's why that whole end of the spectrum has seen adoption by select user communities where it really makes sense, but not very often is it on every single user's device or desktop. And so this kind of unaddressed masses are hungering for a solution that's simple enough that they can just get to their stuff, right? Now, take that whole conversation aside for a moment and think about the technological revolution, a lot of which Mark Andreessen and I were talking about this morning, of what was happening with the consumerization of IT in its earliest days. We started to see the emergence of mobile, right? So mobile and smartphones became much more normal and expected. Everyone's got one. Internet access is rampant everywhere. We're starting to see the emergence of Facebook and then Twitter and all these wonderful communication and social tools that help us interact with the people and causes and events and things that we care about in a way that's pretty powerful and really simple and available anywhere. So those things start to take off, and now we've got, you know, these differing expectations in the workplace where working that way becomes a big desire of that same group of kind of unaddressed masses that just need to get to their stuff. So that kind of starts to form the perfect storm. And guess when Box was born? Right about that time, when that unaddressed mass of people really were thirsting for a solution to just get to their stuff, coupled with this technological wave that made getting to your stuff a whole lot easier and a lot more interesting, and the ability to share and interact with others who care about the same stuff becomes sort of the normal way of interacting online. Well, that really is kind of a perfect storm, and I think why you guys and others like you have chosen Box, because it's that lightweight solution for everyone, for the masses, if you will, that just need to get to their stuff when they need it and know that it's safe, secure, current, and available whenever I want it, wherever I want it. And that's kind of what I see as that really interesting journey between, or from, you know, enterprise, traditional on-prem to sexy, to doing something that users love to use, that they get excited about using, that is the thing that they would choose to use at home. And I think back on Jeff Moore's comment today about, why am I so powerful at home and so lame in the office, right? I thought that was a great quote. And you know, if Box does one thing, it's to make you powerful in the office and to do it with tools that people really enjoy and still be able to look a CIO in the face and say, your content is safe with Box. And that's really, I think, a great journey and a wonderful solution to this kind of unaddressed mass set of people who've been looking for something for so long, and complements the other end of the spectrum where all these bet your business on it applications remain so important and where you've invested so much. Now, my journey along this has also been, well, parallel perhaps. You know, as I said, I started with Documentum back in 1995, and I was just talking to one of my old customers, Allergan, who I've worked with a lot over the last 15, 20 years, and saying, you know, there's no bigger champion of what Documentum stands for than me. I have a ton of personal investment in what that company means and the kinds of problems that it's trying to solve. But I also couldn't be a bigger champion for Box, because I really believe in the problems we're trying to solve. And for me, you know, joining Documentum when it was 60 people and $10, $12 million in revenue, tiny little company, you know, taking us through roughly 15 or 16 acquisitions before we actually decided to be acquired by EMC in late 2003. And at that time, we were about 350 million, I think. Stuck through that with EMC and really had a wonderful journey of learning a lot about a really big corporation and how to work integrations with acquired technologies and starting to look at how things like content management can be leveraged in whole new ways. But after a number of years at EMC, I was kind of hankering for that small company, that agile environment, that fun camaraderie where we all want to work really, really hard and all have our eye on the brass ring and we're all just running as fast as we can to get there. And so I was looking for something that was, well, actually I had 5 criteria I'll share with you. So as I started looking around the market, I said, I want a company that's, well, first and foremost, I'm not driving like 2 hours every day to work. So it's got to be between Palo Alto and San Francisco because I live here in the city. And got to be small and exciting. So kind of the 20 to 100 million-ish phase. Has to have a very dynamic executive team. Boy, got that in spades, huh? and who's really fun and excited and energetic and passionate about what they do and needs someone else like that. And that has a fast-growing customer community and on all that good stuff. And oh, by the way, if your technology is more than 5 years old, I'm not interested. I was absolutely going to look for something new, nimble, modern, and sexy that I could be part of. And boy, did I find it in Box. So that's kind of how I got here. Now, I'm going to echo back to a couple things that I find really compelling about Box, the principles that we hold very dear as an entire company when we think about how to create products and capabilities that you can benefit from and that you'll love and use. You heard Aaron talk a lot about a commitment to simplicity. And I think that's really, in a lot of ways, our secret sauce. Again, giving tools that users love and would choose to use on their own time, and yet we can say to an IT organization, your information is safe with Box, is a pretty compelling thing. But that simplicity is not the traditional software that we've all grown up with. So keeping that focus on simplicity is so important. You heard us talk about openness, about making sure that we can integrate into all sorts of different applications so that we can take Box-managed content and surface it wherever it makes sense to make users more productive in whatever environment they want to work in and whatever device they want to work on. You also heard us talk about the commitment to mobile and some of our great partnership announcements today with HP and with Motorola and so on, and the mobile device manufacturers as well, are really critically important. It's a little early to say the desktop is dead, but if it isn't mobile, it's just not as productive. And of course, we all, through all of that, are incredibly dedicated to making sure that we delight you, that we make sure that you're happy, that you're enjoying the products and the service of Box, that you're getting the most out of your investment, and that you feel like you've partnered with a company who really cares that you're enjoying what you do with Box and that we're helping you do your business things better. And that commitment to delighting our customers is something that you should hold us to. And tell us when we're not. Tell us when we're not delighting you, because that's something we have to fix. If you're not happy, we're not happy. So I guess at the end, it's all about delivering happiness. And I am thrilled to have with us today the master of delivering happiness, the CEO of Zappos, Tony Hsieh, who wrote a book by the same name, Delivering Happiness. So please welcome Tony Hsieh to the stage to tell us a little bit about that. Thanks, Tony.
So the book actually came out last year, and I'm just going to flip through some pictures real quick from our book tour last year. But while I'm flipping through, I wanted to take a quick survey. How many of you have heard of Zappos prior to this? And how many of you have actually shopped with us before? Okay, so very cool. So normally when I do the survey, the ratio is actually about 2-to-1 women to men. And a lot of men I ask say they haven't personally shopped from us, but their wives or significant others have. And a lot of times it's actually on their behalf. And I was giving a tour. We're actually based out of Las Vegas, and we offer tours to the public. A few years ago, I was giving a tour to an executive from one of the major record labels, and if any of you have not taken a tour, would definitely recommend you come for a tour. We'll pick you up from the airport in a Zappos shuttle. Tour takes about an hour, drop you off at the hotel afterwards. And let me just flip over to our offices. And so the tour that I was giving to an executive of one of the major record labels went through the ground floor, which is where our merchandising team is, and then I asked him the exact same question. Had he bought from us before? And he said no, he hadn't personally bought from us, but he suspected his wife had, because these white boxes would show up on his doorstep and then they'd disappear, and he had no idea what was going on. Was she buying them, exchanging them, returning them? And every time he asked her, she would just flat out refuse to answer him and change the subject. So the ground floor is our merchandising department, and then we go upstairs to our customer loyalty team, which is our name for our call center. And we have this whiteboard there where we have all the stats from our call center. How many calls we took yesterday, percent of calls we took and answered in under 20 seconds, sales, and so on. And as I'm explaining through all the different stats, I turn around and he's disappeared. And I'm like, that's kind of weird. And so I kind of backtrack, and then I went down a couple aisles. Turns out he had actually gone down halfway one of the aisles and sat down next to one of our customer service reps and forced her to pull up his wife's account. and he discovered